Hello everyone, this is LW Gaming and welcome to the brand new installment of Future Langrisser series. Well, technically a recreation of the same one from November. But anyways, this time we get to talk about this once again for global version. Isolde and Jayce are on their way. So let's get right into what they are. So first off, let's talk about Isolde. She is a dragon and infantry ally, or unit, I should say. And factions, she's part of Uless, Meteor Strike, and Mythical Realm. And you might be wondering why is Mythical Realm glowing? Well, that's because she is a new faction buffer for the Mythical Realm. Yep, that means now Mythical Realm has 3 faction buffers. First one being Gizarov, second one being Sage of the Trees, and finally Isolde. So anyways, her talent, Will of the True Dragon. Attack and defense increases by 10 to 25% depending on star level. Bonus is double when fighting against dragon enemies. So you can imagine that she's going to be really busted against dragon opponents. That includes SP Bernhardt, Oboro, Renata, if she's ever been seen in Apex. I don't see her nowadays, at least in the higher levels. But in low levels, you could still see her, but not used by common players. Just to let you know. So, anyways, the dragon against having bonus against driving enemies is probably huge in some ways. Like that means she get to do a ton of damage, and also on top of that, she can even like this on work against the enemy with the same unit, like Isolde, for example. So yeah, you can already tell that this is going to be strong. At the end of the action, can choose to gain some sort of will, which is the special perk for Isolde. This effect can trigger again after 2 turns. And if you apply Lonely to yourself, this will enable her to attack without being stopped by guards or anybody with tanks that can guard the enemy units. So yeah, if you had this on, she can basically wreck everything with it. So yeah, watch out if you see Isolde because she is gonna go after your team, no matter how you like it or not. So in my personal opinion, if I think about like how's she gonna work out in Apex? Well, you could expect her to get banned a lot, like AO level, for example, because or maybe Andrio at the level of Andrio or Kintoki or something like that, because the guard ignore is actually something you should watch out for, because if you see someone with a guard ignore, oh, you better not like think that was a cakewalk, because no, it's literally not. Your units will be in danger even with guards protection. So be careful when you fight against the Isolde. And the other will she has is resistance, which increases her skill damage by 25%. And finally, we got survival. Skill cooldown is reduced by 1. If you have all 3 types of will, the damage dealt increases by 10% to 25%. So yeah, you'll do more damage this way if you got all 3 of these wills active on you. And after the attack, you can act again. The above effect applies disregarding buff block if you have one, and can't be dispelled. The act again effect can only trigger once per round. So as you can see, these buffs that you get from the talent, they do not get blocked by the buff block if you have the debuff for it. And also, they cannot be dispelled in any way. So if your opponent tried to use like a sword soul or anything that could dispel them, that's not gonna work. And the act again effect can only trigger once per round. So don't think about using act again to make her do the act again madness. So that's not gonna work. Just an FYI. So anyways, moving on to the skills. So she has those skills named on here, and keep in mind those names are actually there as a placeholder. They're not necessarily going to be called like that in the final version of global. So just to keep that in mind. One cost skill, which is a 4-turn cooldown, self and single target, and it is an assist type of skill. It receives the sort of a hit engine. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Like I said earlier, this is mainly translated through Chinese, so just to keep that in mind. Immunity to all debuffs grants a shield equal to 25% of max HP, and when removed, gains a boost effect for 2 turns. and that cannot be dispelled in any way. After use, you can move another 4 blocks and attack again. After use this skill, after using this skill, the buff duration will not be reduced. So this is kind of like most of the skills that we've seen so far, like Andreo's, but this is different. This one allows her to move 4 blocks instead of usual 3, and also the buff duration will not get reduced, so that's nice. Okay, 2C skill is it's like a 3 version of it, like depending on which will you have. You can release a skill awakened by will. The cooldown of the skill is equal to the cooldown of the skill being used. So if you have Lonely active, you can use the Dragon Soul Altercation Blade, which is a single target attack that deals 1.4 times damage. This damage is treated as magic damage, so your opponent had to use the magic defense to repel it, or repel as much damage as possible. If you're carrying melee soldiers, they will also attack. So yeah, kind of like air slash, where if your soldiers are melees and you can perform range attack, they will attack with you. So that's nice to see. This skill ignores melee damage penalty, so of course, and can move 3 blocks after attacking. So even though it is ranged, you're still gonna deal full damage if you attack it from close range. So that's good to know here. So if you have resistance will awakened already, you can use Dragon Dream Fantasy World, which is a physical damage AoE that does 0.36 times to all enemies within the 2 blocks around itself, and applies the buff block and disables revive effects for 2 turns. And keep in mind, the revive disabling only works in PvP. So you can imagine she's gonna be broken with this. Like for one, especially in PvP, like she can literally disable your revive if you're not careful. So like if you get hit by this thing, so yeah, if your units have like a revive thing on there, well, good luck trying to get that off because if you won't get it off on time, then you're pretty much dead, and there's no going back once you're dead. And finally, if your survival will is awakened, you can use Dragon's Blessing, which is a support skill, allows allies within range to recover 30% HP, and also applies regeneration and reduce damage taken by 15% for 2 turns. So that's actually quite nice to like have like when it comes to support. But most of the time it works great on the offensive side. So you get to choose whether you want her to be a support, but most likely you want her to be DPS most of the time because her kit is pretty busted. And finally, 3C, which is a 5-turn cooldown, 1 block attack, and also is a single target. And also this is the passive before we talk about the active part of this. So passive is after activating the talent to gain will, as well as activating the talent and then performing an action, all mythical realm allies gain attack and defense by 20%, and magic defense increased by 30%, as well as the effect damage during melee attacks will be increased by 15%. Reflect damage taken will be reduced by 30% for 4 turns. Does not stack with other fusion powers. So this is basically her faction buff in her 3C. So most of the modern units nowadays in Langrisser have their faction buff under their 3C effect. So that's actually quite beneficial in many ways. Like Renshio is the first one I believe introduced this kind of mechanic, and then later on Awaken one, and finally Isolde. And anyways, let's talk about what this active component of the 3C does. So this one attacks one enemy, dealing 1.6 times damage. If you have 2 or more types of will, the enemy will not be able to attack in this battle. After combat, deal 0.3 times AoE damage to the target and enemies located in the furthest 3 blocks in 3 straight lines behind it. When an enemy is successfully eliminated, it randomly receives 1 will, which hasn't applied to the unit yet. So if you still don't have all 3 wills enabled, the game will give you 1 randomly, of course. You don't get to choose that one. So yeah, you can tell that Isolde is actually quite solid for your addition if you're thinking about getting her. Which I think you should if you care about PvP. in the long run. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Jayce. Jayce is it's a bit of an okay kind of unit when it comes to PvP, but there are some twists about this character. So yeah, he is kind of an interesting one. Like for the fact that he has a skill that works similarly to someone from Shining Resonance, the free unit named I think it was Excella. Yeah, Excella. Anyways, he has that skill that's similar to that, but is a little different. We'll get into that soon. So first, let's talk about what classes he has. So he has Holy and Mage, which of course makes sense since he's a lot of people call him a reincarnated version of Jessica, which I don't know. I find it really weird how this character becomes how Jessica becomes a he for this reincarnation, but I don't know. It might be wrong though, but I'm not too sure about the storyline how it goes. But anyways, Jayce is part of Ulysses Legends, Origins of Light, and Mythical Realm. And coincidentally, both new units here have something in common. The only difference is that Isolde it has like a meteor strike instead of Origins of Light, like Jayce, for example. And let's talk about the talent. Will travel. In increased by 10 to 20%. At the end of the action, the square it is located on will receive Arcane Brilliance. This area has command attack and end of friendly units within the radius of 2 blocks will increase by 10%. The enemy's magic defense will decrease by 10%, and this will last for 2 turns on the terrain. After the attack, you can remove one friendly Arcane Brilliance and teleport to it. It will not be cast again this turn. Arcane Brilliance has higher priority for terrain coverage. So yeah, Arcane Brilliance is like a interesting terrain, which enables him to teleport to one of those tiles after attacking. So that's actually quite nice for him to use. So that way he doesn't have to stay in danger to end action. His goal is to try to pick on your opponent and then jump away back to safety. All right, next up, let's talk about the 1C skill. So keep in mind, this is fully translated from CN, so not everything here is finalized in global, so just keep that in mind. So the one skill I'm hoping they will change for the global version is the 1C skill, the Arcane Blast. You might be thinking about Arcane Blast. Isn't that Rachel's skill? Well, yes, you are right, but I'm worried that if they kept the name like this, there will be a lot of confusions, which I'm hoping they will address that before we realize. So I'm just hoping they will change the name of this. So yeah. Anyways, this one is an active skill which it can be used on Jayce himself, like defensive terrain or friendly arcane mark to teleport to a target area. After use, it can move 2 additional blocks and attack again. So basically, you can teleport to any of those arcane marks that you have on the map. So that's actually quite nice for him to use. Like if you really need to jump into action immediately, this is the way to go. But as long as you have the tile on that specific location, otherwise you will be potentially wasting that skill. Next up, let's talk about the 2C skill. Vortex of Light Destroying Evil is a 3-turn cooldown, 5 blocks range, and is a 3 blocks AoE. Attacks multiple enemies within range, dealing 0.36 times AoE damage, and apply a special terrain effect for 1 round at a target's location. Destructive Light Vortex. This area has command of 2 block radius. If the enemy is inside, magic damage will be reduced by 10. Not damage. Magic defense will be reduced by 10%. When leaving the range of the action, consumes 1 more mobility per block moved. At the end of the action, if the enemy is in the team's area of effect, which is the portal, like the vortex, they will be teleported to the center of destructive light vortex, and that one has a higher priority for terrain coverage. So this is the skill I was talking about when it comes to Excella's similarities between the two. So this is essentially a vacuum kind of effect. So yeah, if your opponent was trying to run away, well, they really can't because their mobility is reduced. And on top of that, they're going to get stuck there for quite a while, which is good for you, bad for your opponent, as of for the fact that it could annoy them. So yeah, kind of like the scenario with Exela where forces your opponents to like stay there. So yeah, you can imagine there's a lot of things going on with that skill. And finally, we got 3C skill, which is Justice Glow, 3 turn cooldown, 3 blocks of range, and is a single target. And the passive part of this is that for each ally arcane mark on the battlefield, damage shall increase by 10% to a maximum of 30%. And the magic damage part of this is that it attacks one enemy, dealing 1.6 times damage when having the long range soldier. The soldiers will also attack simultaneously and deal more damage to all enemies except mage enemies. Before combat, if the enemy is affected by the effect of magic defense debuff, it ignores guard and attack the target directly. If the enemy is not killed, Jayce will not be able to act in the next turn, which essentially is a self-stun, which is bad for him. So if you really want to do some work with this skill, make sure you get the kill. Otherwise, if you're not able to kill, then yeah, Jayce is done for. Okay, whew, that was a long speaking. But anyways, we're moving on to the next topic, which is what banners to expect. Well, the first week we'll be expecting the new heroes, of course. That's been a tradition for Langrisser. So in his first week, there will be 2 new heroes like Isolde and Jayce, starting on the 29th of February all the way to March 27th. And then on week 2, we have Prezia and Nymph rate-up banner, as well as the Wish banner for Langrisser 1, 2, and 3, starting on the 7th of March all the way to the 20th of March. And then the third week, we have Leo Beck, Epsilon, and Listel on the Destiny banner, and as well as the Wish banner for Langrisser 4 and 5, starting on the 14th of March all the way to 27th of March, which is the end of the major update. And finally, on the fourth week, we have Akka, Young Jessica, Light of Genesis on a Destiny banner, and the other one, which is the classic Destiny banner of Landius, Yulia, and Jugler, starting on 21st of March all the way to 3rd of April. Well, kind of close to April Fools, you know? Well, anyways, what do you guys think? Which one are you going to pull for? I, myself, of course, will be pulling for the new heroes, as a fact that they both are pretty good in their own ways. But there is one in particular that I find it stand out more, and you could probably tell who it is just by going back to the video and see which ones has like a net you the most value out of the two. So if you're missing any of these characters in the Destiny banners, don't hesitate to pick them up if you have enough resources for them. But if not, you don't have to. They will come back later on either Rada banner or Destiny. So anyways, moving on, let's talk about what are the events / changes to expect. Spoiler alert, there aren't any quality of life changes. But there are some events we can look after. So first off, we got Challengers Arena, which is fair arena to anyone who wanted to see how does this mode works. So basically, it's basically a mini Apex with a pre-built units that you can choose from the lineup. But however, watch out for the soldiers, right? Those soldiers are actually your own soldiers, not the preset soldiers. So just keep that in mind. When you go into free arena, you had to make sure your soldiers are at top shape in order for you to be able to use them in a full capacity. And then there's also a secret realm event, which will give you fair Kia shards, which is nice. Which is nice for both players, both new and veteran players. So for new players, they essentially they get this character for free without the need of summoning. But for veterans, they can use her shards to exchange. Or if for whatever reason your favorite character is not 6 stars, you can use that to get her to 6 stars. If you have enough, that is. Alright, next up, let's talk about confessions and exclusive. Well, just only one confession. Originally, I was thinking about like a stitching confession as Wiki Research didn't get any more updates. Well, I decided to keep it because I still have ways to figure out who are the next confession lineups are. So I'm gonna keep it in here for probably the rest of the series, which is glad to have. So first off, we got Z2. Z2's exclusive, which is the armor. HP and defense plus 5% when fighting the enemy with exhaust, which is the debuff that prevents revive. Increase the soldier's attack and defense by 10%. After reviving on self, soul scraps will be generated at the unit's location. This effect can only be triggered once after 3 turns. So yeah, Z2's exclusive is actually quite solid when it comes to survivability, and also more damage dealt for your soldiers. It also makes her even somewhat more tankier than she normally would. And also like if you lose her revive, a soul scrap will spawn at her location. So yeah, you can just stand and then you get that revive back immediately. So that's a nice boost for her. But we'll see how it goes in Apex. I know that her meta use is actually not going away anytime soon because she is too busted to be leaving meta at this time. I don't think she's gonna be leaving anytime soon unless there's a character that can power creep her. But other than that, I don't see that happening as far as I've seen so far. Next up, we got Poyal. Poyal has like an exclusive on her headwear. Defense plus 10%. For every skill that's in cooldown, unit deals 10% more damage for each cooldown skill, max of 30%. After successfully triggering the displacement effect, Poyal obtains the command, which basically hinders the enemy's healing capabilities by 30% for 1 turn, as long as they're within 2 tiles of her, or 2 blocks of Poyal. So yeah, you can already tell Poyal is just there to manipulate the healing effects, which basically slows down your opponent's healing process. So they're not going to be healing as crazy as they normally would. So yeah, you can imagine Poyal is going to go crazy out there after using her displacement effect. Anything that involves displacement. I think the best usage on her is the 3C, obviously, because it pulls all enemies that you hit towards her and then hits them again, and chance of stunning them, and as well as getting the command that reduces their healing received. So that's actually going to be devastating for your opponent because they probably won't be able to recover on time and then get killed like this. And finally, we have the confession. This time we have Elise as the new confession for this update. And courtesy to everyone in the CN community to provide me some help with this, because I'm not sure what am I gonna do with the confessions if nobody else have like mentioned about this. Anyways, moving on, let's talk about casting pattern skills. So anyways, there are 4 new ones this time, like as usual. First one we got Imelda. Int plus 10% after using Queen's Whip. Applies regen and fixed damage immunity to the target, which will last 2 turns. So yep, you can already tell that this is going to be great for Imelda. So basically the Queen's Whip could probably still hurt them, but not as much. Because the casting enables them to have fixed damage immunity. And also regen on top of that. So that means they're not going to lose as much health as they normally would have. So that's nice for Imelda. Next up, we got Ashamar. In plus 5%. When Dance Partner passes through the terrain of 2 blocks around itself, it can gain 2 blocks of mobility, which will not consume your overall mobility. So you might be wondering, how does this work? Well, Ashamar essentially is Luna's aura, for example, when it comes to 3C aura. So when you walk around Ashamar, and you have to be a dancer for her, like a dance partner, they will be moving like two extra blocks than they normally would, something like that, and that's actually quite awesome for Ashamar. I don't know if she's gonna be meta, but maybe not. But we'll see how it goes. Next up, we got Alta Muller. The buffs gained from talent can't be dispelled. Max talent stacks is increased by 1. At the end of the action, if you have 3 or more supreme effects, which is the SB talent, Unit recovers 20% of max HP. So yep, Ultimiller is gonna be quite great out there, like especially in his SP form. So yeah, if you're able to get him in his SP, you're pretty much golden with this. Like you could probably use him in Apex if used in a right play. But we'll see if Ultimiller comes back. But let's just hope it does because honestly, SP Ultimiller used to be great out there, but now with everything going on, he is losing his place, which is pretty sad. And last but not least, my second favorite tank, Christiane. HP and magic defense increased by 5% after using Lady of the Flowers. I believe this is her 3C. Gains Fallen Petals and Holy Shield. When entering battle, the magic defense increased by 10% for 2 turns. So yeah, you could already tell Christian is gonna be pretty busted out there with those bonus magic defense increase. So yeah, you might be wondering, would I be fully casting her? Well, as a matter of fact, I am going to. Like she's already at casting level 5 for me at least. And as soon as her casting releases, I'll get it right away. And finally, before we close off this episode, I want to give you a quick reminder of what's coming next after Isolde and Jayce. And I gotta say, this is gonna be wild. Because we're getting really close to the collab with Guyver, so just keep that in mind. We just need to do one more major update like this before we get into Guyver. And that one goes to Gun and Patricia. They will be coming up next as the next major update patch, and they're going to be important for some units in the future as bond unlockers. So you might be wondering why are they important? Well, like I said earlier, they're bond unlockers, and one of them, like Patricia, for example, she is a bond unlocker for Tarantel. So if you think about getting Patricia here just purely for bonds, make sure you have enough resources for whatever coming up ahead because we're on a tight schedule with the crystal saving here. Like especially that one update where we didn't get the full 4 weeks major update with the Andronemia. Oh man, I don't know how are we all gonna survive that, but at least we make it out alive, huh? So, anyways, Patricia is gonna be important later on, but if you're not planning to go for her, that's fine because she will appear as a hero bag later on. I think on the update with Ice Abyss, or known as Ice Melda, maybe he will call her. So, anyways, hope you all find this video informative, and I'll see y'all next time.